Hello and welcome to Girlfriends. I'm Danielle Bean. I'm a wife and a mom, and I'm on a mission to help you know your worth as a woman so you can find peace, balance, and joy in family living. This week, we're talking about hospitality, inviting people over. Is this a hard thing for you? Let's start on this important topic. Hey, girlfriend. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining me on the newest episode of the Girlfriends podcast. I always love the opportunity to connect here with you week after week. If you're a first-time listener, I want to give you a special welcome. Thank you for being a part of the podcast. Thank you for checking us out. I hope you're going to like what we're sharing here and want to come back for more. This week, we're diving into this topic of hospitality, and this is such a tricky topic for a lot of women. And now as we're kind of approaching into the holiday season in the next couple of months here, we're going to have Thanksgiving, we're going to have Christmas and everything in between. And it's really a time of year where we do think about hospitality. Maybe you're thinking about having relatives come and visit. Maybe you're thinking about hosting Thanksgiving this year or Christmas Eve dinner or whatever you've got. Or maybe you're just thinking about, having people over on a more regular basis. This is something that can be a really challenging topic for a lot of women. And I think that part of it just goes all the way back to like the very roots of who we are, right? Inviting people over sometimes feels like a daunting thing, something that makes it feel like all of a sudden we realize that, all the ways that we kind of feel like we're falling short or that we have to kind of be putting on a show for people if they're going to come over. We kind of set up all these obstacles and you can get to the point where it feels almost paralyzing. And maybe you never invite people over. Maybe you never have people over your house for dinner, for game night. Maybe, besides a play date here and there, you never have another couple come over for the evening. And, I think that's sad because as Catholics, we are meant to be building community wherever it is you live, whatever kind of community you have around you. You're meant to be an active part of that. And part of that is welcoming people into your space. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be alone on our faith journeys. We're not meant to be alone in our marriages, in our family lives. We need to be inviting other people in, and inviting people over, as tricky as it can be, is something that is very much worthwhile. So I do want to talk about this topic. And this is something we've talked about on the podcast before, but I thought today I would just share a few different ideas about ways that you can kind of get better at it. And I don't mean get better at it in that like you're going to host the perfect evening, right? The perfect dinner party, right? And have, the perfect menu and everything's going to come out perfectly. And you're going to have the most amazing, Chinaware on your table or crystal. And like, that's not what I'm talking about. Getting better at it, not in the sense of entertaining, because I think that's a really interesting thing to look at is the way that we talk about hospitality. The way that we talk about having people over, we talk about entertaining sometimes. That word bothers me. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be entertaining, right? I don't want to be having people over so that I feel like I have to put on a show. I want to be inviting people in so that we can be authentically connecting, building real relationships with other people in our lives, and in little ways and in big ways. And so ultimately, I think this is an important topic because it's part of what we're called to do as Christians, be inviting other people in, be connecting with other people, be sharing our journey and helping other people along the way toward God. And this is part of how we do it. Inviting people into your space, getting comfortable doing that, figuring out how we can do that. So the first thing I want to mention for a tip to keep in mind if you're struggling with this idea of hospitality, is as you're beginning to make plans for having someone over, if you've already done the invite, right, have a plan. Now, I don't necessarily mean a plan for what you're going to serve for dinner and what the kids are going to wear and all of that. I mean, fine. I think you're going to have that covered. You're going to be concerned about that, right? That's what distracts us. That's what keeps us from inviting people over in the first place, is kind of that outward appearances stuff that takes a lot of effort and sometimes feels like it might not be worth it. But have a plan. What I mean is have a plan for how you're going to connect with the people that are coming over. So maybe it's just another couple and their kids that you've invited over after Mass one Sunday. Think about who they are. How well do you know them? What's going on in their lives? What things might you ask them about? What things might you share with them about what's going on with you that might be of interest to them? Have a plan for the ways that you're going to connect, and then make sure that you're following through with that. I find that it's really helpful because I don't know about you, but if you've ever found yourself in a situation where you're trying to make small talk with somebody or some sort of a social situation. And all of a sudden, like, I know I've done this, I'll all of a sudden have a thought, I have absolutely nothing to say to this person. Right? That's awkward. That's awful. Right. And we're meant to be connecting with other human beings. We're meant to be recognizing the real presence of other people in our lives and the presence of Christ in them. And so having a plan for how you're going to connect with them makes a lot of sense. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do a ton of research or anything, but give a little bit of thought beforehand. And, that's a really nice way to make people feel welcome when they come into your home. That has nothing to do with entertaining per se, but it's actually being present to them, asking them about their lives. So, maybe someone, like they started a new job recently, or their son just left for college, or, ask about those things. Ask about what's going on in their life and have a genuine interest in them. And part of having that genuine interest is doing just a little bit of prep work ahead of time. Now, of course, sometimes you're going to find yourself in a social situation where you don't know anything about the person. But I find that it's really helpful to keep in mind this idea of wanting to connect by asking questions about what's going on with them, not in a prying kind of way. Like, the worst thing I think is like when someone's a high school senior, they get asked all that year, so what are you doing next year? What are you doing next year? Like there are people like that, or people who just got married. They're continually being asked, how's married life? And so stay away from some of those kind of cliched things, but look for interesting ways to show an interest in what's going on with them. And if you honestly have no idea, like you don't know this person very well, you can just ask a very open-ended question like, what keeps you busy these days? Or, what kinds of things do you like to do in your free time? Or what's a good movie that you've seen recently? Just having these kinds of questions, I think, is really a wonderful way to be connecting with people. And it takes some of the pressure off of you to have a little bit of a plan going into it. I know when we have events here at the house, like every year we have this big Oktoberfest. And actually the time at which I'm recording this, it's the following weekend. So it's very much on my mind. But when we have these kinds of events where there's a lot of different people that are coming over, and a lot of different families, people that we know and that we've known for years, but also some people that we only very recently met and that kind of thing. What my plan is going into in a large event like that is to make sure I connect personally with each of those people. Now, and maybe not all of their kids, like at an event like this with Oktoberfest, there are going to be like 25 kids or something here. Like I'm probably not going to have like intimate personal conversations with every one of those kids, but the couples, the people that we are friends with, making sure that I at least on some level connect with them and have a little bit of a personal conversation. And that's generally my plan for a large event like that. But if you've got a smaller event, if it's just one family or one couple or even one person coming over, you can really have a good plan for how you're going to converse with that person, how you're going to show an interest in their life, what kinds of things might make for interesting, rich conversations with that person, because that's the stuff that connection is made of, showing that interest in them on a personal level. And it takes a little bit of prep work on your part, but I find it really pays off because ultimately that's what it's about. It's not about entertaining. It's about connecting, right? That's what authentic hospitality is about. Welcoming people into your space and connecting with them, building relationships with them. And that happens in a big way when you take that effort and just put a little bit of time into preparing for how you're going to connect with that person. All right. So that's the first one. Have a plan, right? Second tip I want to mention about hospitality is just do it and do it a lot. Okay. So if this is something you struggle with and it's a goal of yours to get better at hospitality in your life in a general sense, you need to just start inviting people over your house. Like I know as scary as that sounds, right? Or as daunting as that sounds. But one thing that I've realized is that the more you do it, the more it feels like a normal thing. And it doesn't become this overwhelming, big, scary thing like we're having people over and it's going to take over my whole week, right? Also, if you're inviting people over on a regular basis, you kind of learn to relax about things a little bit. You don't feel like your house has to be like immaculate and you don't feel like everything about your plan for the food has to be perfect. And, you begin to relax a little bit and it becomes more about the people and more about connecting with them. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get with it, the less it's going to feel like this gigantic thing that you can't possibly do and you keep putting off. And, one way to do this for yourself is to, enlist your spouse, enlist your husband in this kind of plan. If it's something that you want to get better at doing, say, like I'd like for us to have people over more often. Is it okay if I like invite so-and-so over on this date? And then just do it. Just send the text or make the phone call and invite that person over. Then it's on the calendar and you're going to have to work with it. This is what I find is really helpful, is just having that kind of set in stone for you, and just doing it as regularly as you can. One thing is, if you do host a big event and it feels like, oh, it takes a lot, like to get my house in shape for it and to make the plan for the food and blah, 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 all these things, then maybe it's going to be easy just a few days after doing that to just invite someone over for coffee or something, right? Because your house is still probably in pretty decent shape and it doesn't feel like this huge, overwhelming task. And then the more you do those kind of smaller events and inviting people over in a more casual way, the more comfortable you're going to get with it. And you're going to become a better host. You're going to become better at providing hospitality and building community in a real way. All right, the next thing I want to suggest is to start small. You don't have to have a gigantic dinner party. Like, we sometimes set up these things as like the ideal in our minds. And maybe, somebody who's really great at hospitality and is always inviting people over and they do a fantastic job of it. And you think, I can't possibly do that. Well, start small. You might just invite another couple over for dessert and coffee. This is something that Dan and I did a lot when we were younger. There were other couples that we knew that lived nearby, and we all had like a baby or two. Like, we were at that stage of family life, and it was just easy to invite people over and say, like, we're going to like play Scrabble and we're going to have coffee and I'll make a dessert. Then I didn't feel like I had to like put on a big show with a, big dinner, multiple courses, and, worrying about the kids. A lot of times it was easy to have people over if you have two little kids because they go to bed. And all I had to do was just like, bake a cake or make a pie or whatever and serve coffee and play a game. Very simple. You can do that, right? You could do that. You could just, if there's another mom, maybe you just want to invite her over for tea, or, starting with something small like that, I think can make it feel much more doable for you. And, this kind of gets at that thing that gets in our way all the time, that making the perfect the enemy of the good, right? We talk about that all the time here on the podcast because that is something we women are really, really good about doing, kind of setting the standard that's this impossible, idealistic standard of perfection. And then it gets in the way because we know we can't do it, or it just feels too hard, or we're falling short of it, or we tried it once and we failed. And then we think, well, we just throw the whole thing out, right? I can't do any of it. But you can do something small. Start with something small. So something as simple as inviting people over for game night, and maybe you're just going to have snacks. Great. You know what? Drinks and snacks and a game. That sounds like a lot of fun. So the more you can get yourself to do those smaller things, then doing something a little bit more elaborate might become more doable for you. It might not feel like such a daunting thing. But the bonus is, the important thing is, in the meantime, you're going to be really connecting with people. You're going to be getting better at hospitality in the way that really matters. That has nothing to do with the food, nothing to do with the games, has everything to do with building relationship. And this is how you do it. All right. Next, let some people help you. Let people help you. This is a big thing. So sometimes you'll invite people over and then our pride gets in the way and we don't want to they'll say what can I bring? And you're like, nothing. Right? I know I've done this a million times. And sometimes it's because I'm very controlling about what I want to serve for food. But, if there's something that would be helpful, say, could you bring dessert? Could you bring a salad? Could you bring a side dish? Just make it so that it's easier. And, also sometimes financially easier if somebody can, bring part of the food or bring drinks for the kids or, something along those lines. So don't hesitate to ask for help. And along the lines of asking for help, if you're struggling with hospitality and this is something you want to get better at doing, maybe you have a friend who would like to go in on it with you. Maybe the two of you can work together to host an event at your house one time and at her house another time. And you're kind of like friends in the task of putting on whatever this is that you're going to invite other people to. That's kind of a fun way to build your relationship with this person. First of all, you're growing in friendship in this kind of cooperation with your friend, but together you're both getting better at hospitality, and it's becoming easier because it's not everything is on your shoulders. And I know that's sometimes the most daunting thing. I know, especially when the kids were younger, I just felt like I couldn't even keep up with everyday life. I couldn't even, just have regular dinners here. Never mind having a dinner where we're inviting people over. Gosh, and like I couldn't manage to like keep the living room clear of toys for very long. And so thinking of having people over when it felt like life was chaotic a lot of the time, that just felt so daunting. But if it's not just on you to get everything in order, not just on you to plan everything and do the work that it requires, then it feels a little bit easier and actually becomes a little bit fun. You're in this project together. You're making this plan together. So maybe there's some girlfriend in your life that you'd like to reach out to and just say, hey, I have this idea. Like, I'd like to get better at inviting people over. Let's plan an event at my house this month, at your house next month, and let's see how it goes. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. And if you live near me and you want to do it, call me up. All right. So letting other people help, let other people bring something, let other people support you in the work that's required. And then it takes the burden off of you. All right. Next thing I want to suggest is to stay within your budget. So have a budget, even if it's just a general idea of how much money you want to spend, because I know this, when you are hosting an event, it can be easy to kind of slip into this mentality where it's like, everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be the best. So I have to run out and buy a new tablecloth and new dishes. And I have to buy this most expensive food and, all of this stuff. You have to like replace the door in the bathroom, like all these things, like all these, these things all of a sudden become a priority. And next thing you know, you're spending way too much money on this one event. And that alone can become an obstacle to having people over because you're like, oh no, I'm not doing that. Last time it cost me $5,000, right? Like I can't possibly afford it. So have a budget and just stay within it. Have a limited budget for how much you're going to spend on whatever it is you're doing and stick with it. And having people help is one way to kind of alleviate that, but then being creative with the kinds of things you might do or what you might plan for the food can also be just part of that process. But it takes some of the pressure off too. If you're not feeling like it's even possible to spend more than X amount of dollars on this particular event, on having people over for dinner or for brunch or whatever, just having a budget in mind, I think just sets a limitation, even in your own mind. Like, this is not like the be all end all huge thing that we have to spend a ton of money on or else. Like, that just adds to the stress of it. It makes it, first of all, less likely that you're going to enjoy it. Second of all, it might be a source of conflict in your marriage and in your family. And it turns the whole thing into like a net negative. So you don't want to do that. So have a limited budget in mind that's reasonable for you. Okay, the next thing I want to mention is when you are having people over your house, do not apologize for your house. Like, this is something that I think people feel very self-conscious maybe when people are coming over and all of a sudden they're apologizing for the mess in the house or apologizing for something that doesn't work quite right or like, oh, sorry, like, like the table's crooked or like pointing out all the things that are wrong. Because we become hyper aware of our own flaws and the flaws in our own environment. Like, nothing like saying people are coming over in an hour to like look around your house and suddenly your eyes are open to every single thing that is wrong, right? You can see that. So don't apologize. Be who you are. And this can be a real act of humility sometimes because it's pride that gets in the way and makes us want to have everything perfect and to kind of be putting on this perfect show for people and to have people think that like our houses are this certain standard or our kids behave this way. Or, of course you want to be putting your best face forward. And of course you want to clean up a little bit. You don't want it to be a wreck. But at the same time, don't be so focused on it when people are over that you're talking about it. Because this is it's distracting to the people that have come over. It makes them feel awkward. It might even be highlighting for them things they never would have noticed. So it's not helpful. And it doesn't help your own mentality because how fun is that? Like, if you have people over your house and the conversation is just about how terrible your house is, or, you're apologizing for the state of things or apologizing for whatever you're serving or making fun of yourself in some way, like, that's not pleasant for you either. That's not going to be a fun event that you're going to look forward to doing something like that again. So look for ways to just stop that negative self-talk and especially stop it from coming out of your mouth, right? So you want to be a welcoming presence, a cheerful, accommodating, welcoming hostess to the people that are coming into your home. That doesn't mean you have to be Betty Crocker perfect. What it does mean is be authentically yourself and be comfortable in that. I've been invited over to people's houses before and things are not like Martha Stewart perfect in there. And Gosh, I don't care. In fact, it makes me feel more comfortable and more welcome, knowing that they welcome me into their space without making excuses for it, without feeling like everything has to be pristine and perfect before they'll allow me to come over. Like I feel a more authentic connection in situations like that. So keep that in mind, and definitely don't be apologizing even in your own mind, but definitely not out loud to your guests when you have people over. All right. The last thing I want to say is be present and listen. This is something we need the reminder of over and over and over again. I need the reminder as much as anybody, that because it's so easy to get caught up in all of the things. Like we women, it's that conflict between Mary and Martha, right? So like your Martha is so worried about like how the food's coming out, or, you know, how clean everything is, or what kind of dishes you're going to serve this in, and all of these things, which, yeah, it can be important, right? That can be an important part of kind of celebrating something or hosting an event, but that's not the most important thing, right? What did Jesus remind Martha of when he interrupted her? He reminded her of the importance of people and presence and relationship. So relationship with the Lord, especially. He reminded her of the gift of her presence and his presence and the connection that they could be having. That the one thing that is most important, right? The better part. He reminded her of that. So when you're preparing for an event, remind yourself of that. Tame your inner Martha, tap into your inner Mary, and look to be present to the people that you're having over. Look them in the eye when you speak to them. Be listening in your conversations with them. This is what it's all about. This is why you're having people over. This is what builds community, is having people over. Yes. Putting on a little bit of an event. Yes. Maybe serving food or having some sort of an activity that you're doing together. Yes. But the most important thing is connecting with them. And that means being present to them and listening. I've told the story many times of my daughter, Gabby, years ago when she was very little. And she was interrupting me while I was on my phone. I'm just sitting there like scrolling through my phone and just saying, mama, mama, mama. And she was just interrupting me. And I was like, yeah, go ahead. And I'm like scrolling through my phone as she's saying this to me, like, mama, 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 listen. And I remember like not even looking up from my phone and saying, go ahead, Gabby, mama's listening. Right. I'm still just scrolling through my phone. And Gabby said to me something I will never forget, deeply shameful moment in my motherhood, where she said, no, mama, I want you to listen with your eyes. Ouch. That was a real wake up call for me. And not just in my parenting, right? Because this is what every human being wants. We want to be listened to with your eyes. We want to be seen. We want to be acknowledged. This is what makes human connection so powerful and meaningful. So listen with your eyes. If you're having people over, if you're going through this effort of hospitality in any way, shape, or form, listen with your eyes, connect with people, be truly present and be listening to them, because that's what they're going to remember. You know, whether or not your event was a quote unquote success, that's how it's going to be measured, with whether or not you made them feel seen and known and loved and welcomed. Not what food you served, not how pristine your windowsills were or baseboards. Like nobody cares about that stuff. So focus on what's truly important, being present to the people that you're inviting into your life. Well, I hope those tips help you a little bit. Let me just review them for you real quick here. First of all, have a plan, right, for how you're going to connect with people. Just make yourself do it a lot. Okay. It's going to be a habit that you get better at as you do it. Start small. You don't have to overwhelm yourself. Start with a small event. Let other people help. Stay within your budget. Do not apologize for the state of things or for the way that you're entertaining people. And then finally, be present and listen. But maybe you have some ideas. What works for you? What helps you to be better at hospitality? What helps you make this a priority in your life, in the life of building a community with the people around you? I would love to hear from you. You can always email me, Danielle@daniellebean.com, or over at goodcatholic.com. You can leave a comment on the show notes that are always available over there, or connect with me on Voxer. You can leave me a voicemail. It's a super fun, easy way that you can leave a voicemail for a future episode of Girlfriends is through Voxer. And the link to connect with me on Voxer is always in the show notes over at goodcatholic.com. All right, we've got more of the show coming up for you in just a minute, but first we're going to take a quick break. I'm Danielle Bean, and you're listening to the Girlfriends Podcast.
How could we possibly live in a world where the vast majority of reality is not seen? You and I live in a world that's much larger than our senses can perceive. Imagine being blind, deaf, unable to speak or to feel, and yet live in the world that we actually know. This is a bit similar to the world we actually live in. Only a small part of reality is material. Scripture gives us a glimpse into an entirely other world, a great cloud of witnesses in which we are enveloped. Angels are spoken of so often in the sacred scripture, perhaps more numerous than every human person that has ever existed, and they're all around. What do they do? How can we know them? What is their influence upon us? Where do they act? How do they move? How do they think? How do they communicate? Do they enlighten us? Do they hinder us? We will explore for the next 21 days, if you join us, this vast world, with the hope that you will be equipped to navigate in it, to enjoy it, and ultimately to know Him by virtue of participating in it. Join us as we explore the world of the angels and the supernatural.
All right, welcome back. Now we're at the point in the show where I usually share a little bit of listener feedback, maybe a question from a listener. And this week on Instagram, I heard from Jessie. Jessie reached out with this question. She said, how can I break a bad coffee habit? I know I should not drink so much caffeine, but as a mom of little kids, I feel sleep deprived every single day. And I find myself drinking cup after cup just to stay awake. Some days I drink as much as 6 cups of coffee. I can wind up feeling jittery and unbalanced, and I know that this is too much. Any ideas to help me break this habit? Okay, Jessie, first of all, I get it. I get it. We all find ourselves, especially when you're a mom of little kids and you're sleep deprived, just reaching for whatever to try to get through. So I understand that, but it's good that you're recognizing that this isn't an ongoing habit that you want in your life. This isn't necessarily how you want to be functioning. It doesn't feel good. You're feeling jittery and unbalanced. So yeah, it's good. I would say start slow, like maybe just set a limit, like tell yourself if you're having 6, that is a lot of coffee. So maybe just say, I'm never going to have more than 4 and do that for a week. And then see if you can go down to 3 and do that, until you get to the point where you feel like it is a little bit more balanced approach to that caffeine habit. Also, you might need to replace it in some way. Maybe have a special kind of juice that you like to drink, or a decaffeinated tea, an herbal tea or something that you would have instead of that, because it can kind of break that habit of like you just want this warm cup of something, right? You could do that in some way that's going to be a little bit better for your health. You might also want to think about replacing a cup of coffee with a nap. I know. I don't know if it's possible because you say you've got little kids, but is it possible to just have some downtime and lie down on the couch rather than reaching for caffeine to be like stimulating yourself? Maybe you actually need to just get a little bit more rest in your day. That could be something that could be life-changing, right? So maybe there's an opportunity in the afternoons. Maybe your little guys go down for a nap and you've got older kids or something, and you're just going to make that quiet time. And whether or not you fall asleep, I don't know, but at least have it be time where you're going to rest. I would recommend replacing a cup of coffee with that, especially in the afternoons. And then, the final thing I want to mention is maybe just give yourself a coffee curfew. Like maybe at a certain point in the day, like, no coffee after 1 p.m. or something like that. That can be really helpful actually for the kind of sleep you're going to get, because you can end up in this terrible cycle where you're feeling sleep deprived. So you're reaching for the coffee. The coffee is caffeinating you, and maybe you're having it throughout the entire day, and you're still, feeling the results of that caffeine when you're going to bed at night. So you're not getting good sleep. So you're waking up in the next morning, not rested, reaching for the caffeine again. It can be a vicious cycle. So find a way to interrupt that. And I would say giving yourself a caffeine curfew is something that might really help. Those are just some ideas I have, but maybe somebody out there has broken the coffee habit. Maybe you've done something similar. Maybe you can relate to what Jessie's struggling with. You can reach out to me, send me an email, Danielle@daniellebean.com, or connect with me in the show notes over at goodcatholic.com. Or if you're watching on YouTube, comments right below. We would love to hear from you. Would love to hear your tips and your ideas for breaking a caffeine habit or really any bad habit. I love those kinds of tips. So be sure to reach out. All right, that's all the time we have for today. But if you've enjoyed today's show, if you enjoy what we do here on Girlfriends, can I ask you a favor? Can you just leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's on iTunes or Spotify or Google Play or anywhere that you're listening to this podcast? Can you leave us a review, a rating and a review? Because that is truly helpful. And your comments are so encouraging to me. I love it when people leave iTunes reviews because I go through and I read them all. And I really appreciate it when you let me know what you like about the show, maybe some topics that you'd like to hear about. And it's truly helpful when you give us those ratings and reviews because it helps us to grow our audience here. And if you don't listen on iTunes or on, YouTube or wherever, if you're just listening by hitting play on the website, I know some of you do that, good old fashioned hit play on the website so you can listen to a podcast. If that's you, just let somebody else know that you enjoy the show because that can really help us to spread the word, to help grow our audience, grow our community of girlfriends right here on the podcast. I'm so grateful for all the ways that you encourage me and that you do just that. So thanks so much for being here today. I'm so grateful for the time that you give me every week. I'm grateful for the time that we get to spend together. It truly is a gift to me to be able to connect with you right here on Girlfriends every week. And until next time, I hope you enjoy your day and God bless your week.